now we'll move on to Rabbi Yitzchak David Smith. I know that he's on. Rabbi Yitzchak David Smith is, I see his picture now, his face too. He is I'm going to balance it out. He is, like many of you on right now. He is, first of all, as you see his uniform, he's a Chabad Chassid, a Shliach. He spreads the message, the Torah message throughout the world, but he's also a lawyer. So it's Torah Abdullah b'Makom Echad, and he's going to speak, continue this topic of Cherus and how we could be free people today. Rabbi Smith, you're going to articulate the title better than I will. And please, Rabbi Smith, a good night. Thanks for joining us.
A good night, Rabbi Wilhelm, and to all your Talmidim. Baruch Hashem, it's a tremendous honor to be here. A good night. First of all, it's Pesach, and the Kinus Torah is something that's very, very important, very dear to the Rebbe, was to have a Kinus Torah. And why is it so important to have this Kinus Torah? What are we accomplishing? Or what's the chashivas of it? That it's how we use our time, because now we have time, extra time in our day, because we're not meshuba to the different things, talking about freedom. We're free from a lot of the obligations we have during the regular work year. And so we're going to set aside the time to be able to learn Torah and to come together and learn Torah. But there's a special significance of Torah, and that's what we're going to address today, and how the Rabbi Wilhelm asked me to speak about the concept of being ben chorin. And he also put in a pasuk in the flyer, which relates, I want to show how this really applies, and following what Rabbi Friedman said, what Rabbi Friedman said earlier, that, and the question that was asked, how do we make this practical? There's one thing is to speak about things in theory, but the real key is action. When we take action, we're going to see what the action brings. Now, Torah, when we learn Torah, that's kaveya, the mitzias in the world. When we are actually saying this is what we're going to do, this is what the Torah says, it actually changes the world, and we're Meir Hira. This is a online Smicha program. The whole goal of getting an online Smicha, or any Smicha, online is just the medium. It's no different than a regular Smicha. But the concept of Smicha is to become a Meir Hira. A Meir Hira is you set the direction. Each one of you is the one who's setting the direction, and in fact, it's the responsibility of every Meir Hira to set the direction for his flock. That flock starts with yourself and your family. The flock may expand. There may be other people that are going to come to you for guidance and advice on how best to connect to the Eibishter. So your kaveya, through your setting the direction, your kaveya, what is going to be the reality in the world? And that's what we need to be able to understand and take that responsibility when we're going to get smicha. That smicha is a responsibility. And the responsibility goes back all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is our insurer. We have an insurance policy that we're going to be able to guide people correctly. The reason we could guide people correctly and say what's true in Torah is not because we're so smart, and it's not because we know so much information. That is not the insurance that we're going to be able to guide people properly. The insurance to guide people properly is actually because we have an insurance policy that goes from Moshe Rabbeinu all the way down to this generation, to the smicha that you have already or that you're going to receive. So that's why the Rebbe was so moved by the concept of people coming together for Kinus Torah. He wants us to take this time to reflect on the state of our lives, the state of the world, and from a Torah, kaveya, set the metzias in the world what it's going to be. So what's really the definition of ben chorin? What is the concept of being a free man? And if we reflect on it, if we reflect on what is the difference between a man who's free and a man who's not free, because we all look free, right? Especially in this great land that we are zeich to be able to walk around. I get to choose which time I want to leave the house, where I want to go to the house, when I want to turn my lights on, when I want to turn the water on. I have all these freedoms, but am I really acting as a ben chorin? So the answer is that the Eibishter, when he took us out of Yetzias Mitzrayim, when he took us out of Egypt, he permanently put us into a state of being a ben chorin. That's who we are now. We are truly, truly free people. That is who I am. I am a free person. I don't have an option on that. The only difference is I can sometimes create in my mind an illusion, a perception that somehow I'm limited in my freedom. But it's all in my thinking. Where do we really see this? And we have to ask ourselves a question that Rabbi Wilhelm chose a topic, Ben Chorin. If I'm saying that this is who I am, then it's a shocking thing that he chose this as a subject. Because he didn't, would he create a shir on the subject, what's life like with a nose? What's life like with, breathing? That's so fundamental. Because the fact that I have a nose or I breathe is something that I may be more or less conscious of it different periods of the day, but basically it's with me all the time. But the reason it's so important to talk about being a Ben Chorin is because I have a choice in my thinking to momentarily lose sight of who I really am. Now, where do we see the most evident, the evident beichin, the choice between am I a Ben Chorin or not in my thinking, is when it comes down to choice. The real test of whether you consider yourself a Ben Chorin or when you're acting or I'm acting as a Ben Chorin is whether or not I believe I have a choice. So let's take some of the common statements that we say in life. We come along, we come to a situation, and the person says, I have no choice. I have to do this. Or in the past tense, I had to do this. Or there's no other option. Or there's only option or B, it's either this or that. I have to choose one of the two. Or another expression that's common in America today is, especially when it comes to, let's say, making choices and elections, lesser of two evils. I don't really have a choice, so I'm going to choose the lesser of two evils. All this kind of language is the language of a person who's really free, because we just said we are really free, but we're speaking like a slave. Because in the Eibishter's world, there's never a situation in which you have no choice. By definition, we have a choice on everything we do. I really have a choice. I have a choice. If someone comes and says to me right now, they want me to go and do something else, I don't have to say, I have no choice. I'm stuck on this, I'm stuck speaking this Kinus. I have no choice. I can't do this. No, one second. I could just disconnect this right now. I could walk away. I could not disconnect. I could walk away. I could tell you where I'm going. I don't have to tell you where I'm going. I have a million choices. And I have a choice what word I'm going to say next. So we always have choices. When we recognize that we have choices, and it's never an A or B choice. This going back to the question that was asked before. I'd like to suggest to the person that asked the question of Rabbi Friedman about people who are struggling and suffering. I have seen, and I would suggest in every single situation where a person finds themselves in pain, it's because they are stuck by thinking they don't have any choices. As soon as you open up the possibility, you see you have choices. What's Sfiras Ha'omer? Sfiras Ha'omer is coming to tell us we have 49 choices on how to approach any situation. I can mix my love with a little bit of Gevurah, my Chesed with the Tferes, and my Chesed with Hayden, Netzach with this, and all these things. I have 49 choices. So the Ben Chorin always has choices. And there's never only two options. When someone says these are your only options, then you know it's a false presentation. Because in the Eibishter's world, there's an infinite number of choices. I could say, I don't accept the two options you're giving me, even if you don't even know yet what the other options are. You have to know that there's always choices. And once you see that you have choices, then you are living and you're guiding your thinking in a way of a Ben Chorin, which you really are.
Rabbi Smith, but isn't it really the Eibishter's mitzvah my real choice? When you say you have many choices, I could follow the Isser or the Isser Torah. I mean, ultimately we know which choice we should choose. Is that where you're headed?
Well, no, I'm not making a value judgment as to which one you should choose yet. First, you have to acknowledge, even when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, the Torah says, "B'charta b'chaim." Everyone does have a choice to choose the opposite of life at every second in time. If we don't realize that everything, when we're speaking and we're doing a mitzvah and we're putting on tefillin, we're eating matzah on the night of the Seder, it's a commandment, but there's a clear choice not to do it. We see the Russia came to the table. He has a choice. The Chacham has a choice to be the Chacham of the Rasha. There's 4 sons, there's 4 options, and we know there's a 5th son who didn't even show up. So I'm not compelled to be at the Seder. I was at 2 Sedarim this year, and I chose voluntarily to come to that Seder. When I know I have a choice not to, then I'm living in the state of a Ben Chayim, because I'm not going to prejudge what my choice is going to be. I am constantly in a state of choosing. I'm choosing to interact with this person. I'm choosing to speak this way. Every single thing is a choice. Once I surrender, I would suggest that even if I surrender and say, I have no choice, I have to eat matzah by chatzos. What do you mean you don't have to eat matzah by chatzos? The Eibishter gave you a commandment, and a person could choose, God forbid, not to do the commandment. It's a choice. Every moment's a choice. Once you start to think you don't have a choice, then I'm suggesting that it becomes an infusion of life. It starts to infect the rest of life. Your person is going to think that they're being very holy. They say, I don't have any choice. I have to do all these mitzvahs. But the end result is going to be that they're going to now start to actually rebel against those mitzvahs because they think that they're stuck in them. We both want to be in servitude to the Eibishter. On the other hand, we want to rebel against the Eibishter. So the Eibishter says, he's smarter than us. He created us. He says, listen, I want you to be my servants, but you have a choice at every moment. So choose to be my servant at every moment. And that's how he interacts with us. So that's why he says, B'charta b'chaim, it's clearly in the Torah that we have a choice. Our lives are our rules. You see that we all make rules around our lives. Who I speak to, who I always speak to this person, what kind of things trigger me, what things I'm allowed to, all these kind of things are all rules we've constructed. And if you actually pay attention to the rules in your own life, you will see that by choice you've made rules that are like a complicated board game. You know the board game that says, and now you should take the third consecutive turn should take the piece that's second from the left that's not blue, and goes on and on. You can't make sense of it. And that's how we get ourselves into increasing levels of not living the level of Ben Chayim. So what we need to do is recognize that we have a choice. And that's, by the way, for those that learn the Maimer from the Rebbe's Maimer from Yud Aleph Nissen, Yom Hashtei Isser, the Rebbe is saying you can never ascribe control to somebody else or anything, to any star, to any constellation, to any person, that they have any control over what you're going to receive, because as soon as you do that, you're putting that they have the choices. And then once you say they have the choices, you've made them into a God. In the Eibishter's world, there's only choice in the Eibishter. In the essence of the Eibishter, there's an ability to make a choice, and he's implanted in me the ability to make a choice. Am I going to acknowledge him, or am I going to appreciate him, or not? That's my choice. And if I acknowledge and appreciate him, I will want to connect with him. If I'm not in that mood, I will not do that. I could be putting on 4 pairs of tefillin, but be nasty to somebody else, and I am not connecting to the Eibishter in that moment. So my job is to constantly recognize I have that choice. I can't put the choice in anyone else's hands. The Eibishter chose me, and I chose the Eibishter. It's an act of choice, and that's what makes us a Ben Chayim. So if I put it in someone else, if I say the son has choice whether to provide for me, or the mazolas, or the government, or my boss, or my spouse, or someone else, the neighbor, or whoever it is, I'm actually both denying the Eibishter. The Rebbe says you're making these people into Elokaya, you're making them into a god. And I'm also denying myself. I'm denying that I'm a Ben Chayim, that the choice resides in me to decide what I'm going to think, speak, and do at all times. To always have the choice. So being a Ben Chayim is not a perk of this Pesach miracle. It's not a perk like I got, okay, now I became a free man, like I got, an extra ticket to go to an amusement park, so I'm also a Ben Chayim. No, this is the essence of who we are. The Eibishter revealed that in Yetzias Yisrael. So he took us to a place where actually, we don't have the time to get into this tonight, but if you pay close attention to my Marim, like in Mayim Rabin, Taf Reish Lamed Vav, and so forth, the Rebbe Marash is saying there's really no match at all between the energy, this coming to Rabbi Wilhelm is saying, once we're aware of this, and we're aware of where this power of choice is coming from, we'll always choose the right choice. because we'll always want to stay connected to the Ruach Hashem, the Spirit of God Almighty, the Ruach Yisrael Saba, that Yaakov Avinu chose to live in the Ruach Yisrael, Ruach the Eibishter. We're always going to want to stay there. Now, I want to mention just two stories with brief reference about choices, examples from our own inspirations. And the Rebbe says whenever he tells a story of a tzaddik, that a story is meant not to tell us how great the tzaddik is. That's a side effect of the story. The purpose of the story is to tell us how great we are and how we're, as the listeners, and how great we're supposed to make our choices. So the Friedman Rebbe, we all know the story that the previous Lubavitch Rebbe was interrogated, and he was told at the point of a gun that he should compromise on his principles. And the person said, listen, you're not compromising. Listen, this gun will make people, great people have compromised their principles because of this pistol. And the Friedman Rebbe said to him, no, it's not. This toy's not going to work on me. Why? Because that only works for a person who has many gods in one world. I have one God in two worlds. So the Friedman Rebbe's position was not based on whether the bullet was going to be triggered. If, God forbid, the man had pulled the trigger, the Friedman Rebbe would not have changed his position. He made a choice. The other men that this interrogator was referring to had felt that they had no choice but to surrender their principle. They had convinced themselves to give up their status of Ben Chorin and subjugate themselves to the rules that some other man created. And therefore, they ended up, Rahman al-Islam, losing in this world, and I don't know what happened the next. But the Friedman Rebbe said, for he is not going to lose in this world and the next, because he knows he has choices, and his choice is to not compromise on a single one of his principles. Similarly, the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson, whose birthday was yesterday, he had a choice. He was told, and many people in his position didn't see a choice, to sign off on a letter by the Russian government. Communists wanted him to sign a letter. There was enough provisions for all the Jews and everything was taken care of, and they wanted to show the world that the rabbis sign off on how wonderful the communists are and how wonderful Russia is. And the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, he refused because he knew he had a choice. The consequences that happened of being sent to exile and passing away in exile is not what he would put on his wish list, but he didn't take away from his choice that he knew he had a choice in every moment. So we can see from the stories that we have to keep choice, our understanding of choice, front and center. Now, how does that relate to us? Here we are in a Smicha program, coming together in a Kinus Torah. We have to understand that the whole impetus for the Rebbe that people are learning Smicha is because the Rebbe put a tremendous emphasis on every person getting Smicha. And I'd like to suggest that the Rebbe's goal is tied in directly into the concept of Ben Chorin. And I'd like to take an opportunity to explain this as follows. The Rebbe wanted to decentralize the Torah. The Torah is supposed to be in every individual. And we're going to see that this is today's Tanya, that really the Eibishter's intention is that every person's going to have the Torah implanted in him and no longer even need a teacher. You won't even need a Smicha program when Mashiach comes, because you're going to have a direct download of this right from the Eibishter into your heart. The Rebbe wants to get us in that direction. So what does he do? He says, first of all, let's look at 4 things that the Rebbe did to decentralize Torah. Number 1, he said every man should get Smicha. You should be a Rav in your own house. You should not be dependent on another Rav to tell you what you should do in your own house. Also, everyone who's a Rav in their own house is now a Rav for the community in waiting, or communities that will be formed when the time arises that he has to step out of his family Rabbanus and now increase his Rabbanus to be the Rav of a community. The Rebbe is preparing a whole cadre of decentralized Rabbanim by giving that they should all have Smicha. That's what you're getting. Number 2 is the Rebbe encouraged Chidushei Torah, that everyone should write new innovations in Torah because the completion of the Torah requires that. It's not just in one great guy's, great man's hands. Everyone has to write Chidushei Torah. That's you and me. The third is the Rebbe opposed the concept of having a chief rabbinate in Eretz Yisrael. There should be no centralization of the Torah. That was opposed in Russia by all the Rabbanim. There should never be a chief rabbi. And the fourth thing is the Rebbe opposed the creation of a Sanhedrin. The Rebbe said it's the greatest danger to the Jewish people. So letter, he says the greatest danger would be creating a Sanhedrin. Why? Because all these things, the chief rabbi idea and the Sanhedrin idea represent centralization of the Torah. The whole idea of getting smicha yourself is to decentralize the Torah. There can be no central authority in the Torah. If you look at the Rambam in Hilchos Molochim, this applies even to the non-Jews. If you look at the Rambam in Hilchos Molochim, Perik Tes, Halacha Yudalet, he says, Mitzuvin Heim Aladinim, the non-Jews are Mitzuvin Aladinim, they have to Heshiv Dayanim v'Sheftim b'chol pelach b'pelach. There has to be Dayanim and Sheftim, there has to be Bati Dinim of the non-Jews established in every single location. It's the ultimate decentralized situation. Every town, every village has to have Dayanim, non-Jewish if possible, and not Jewish if they're not available. Dayanim in every single community to establish and to not only establish what the rule is and judge a person, but also to lahazir. You have to teach them. You have to teach them what the Sheva Mitzvahs are. So the Eibishter's perspective is this ultimate decentralization. So you're going to be the Meir Hira, and you can't say, I don't know. I just did what I was told. You're now learning and you're now knowing, and it's your responsibility to look up the sources and to challenge. I want to explain over here. There's a beautiful the Shut Shaz and Shuvas of the Chut HaShani, where he actually, on a certain issue related to the Maram Afano and the Hanahagas the Maram Afano, the Shut HaShani, Chut HaShani, he actually challenges the Halakha Chasam Sefer. Now, who's greater than the Chasam Sefer? Here's what he says. He says that it's our obligation. That he says, "B'chol der v'der." This is the Chut HaShani writing. "B'chol kadmonim lo yimnonenu lihashiv al gedolim." That the previous generations, they never stopped themselves from challenging the great people that were before them. B'chol eifin, in every way that was necessary to challenge them. Hamoyel, that would be helpful. V'af ki yadati v'nega archi me'erchei ha'mivcharim shekadmoini. Never, I know my real stature in relation to everybody else. Nevertheless, each one of us received our portion from Har Sinai. I was on Har Sinai. I received it directly. I can't say, Rabbi Wilhelm is going to take care of it for me. That's denying my portion of the Torah. And Rabbi Wilhelm can't say, Rabbi Smith, well, maybe he knows that subject. Let him take care of it. No, it's something that every person has a responsibility. I kibalti et sheloi b'sinai v'gam b'tziri ha'roi tzoyin k'meini, and also for the young members of the flock like me, he writes, hunach meichel is God there, but there's been established a place for me to set aside. Lachein evchar darchai achastiv, I am going to choose my way, and I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to hold tight to it. Hold strong to it. I'm not going to be weak-handed and weak-minded and weak-hearted in saying what I believe to be the Torah to be saying. Ki Torah hu, this is Torah, ve'ein machanifim l'shum adam, and we do not flatter any man. It's Isser, he's saying. For a person to say, you're a bigger rabbi than me, whatever you say. So the Rebbe wants us to have this attitude. It has to be done with kavod. But it also has to be that I have responsibility. It's not because I know.
I think the word is more than because humility.
Has to be the humility. Because the humility is not that I am competing with his knowledge. I am knowing it's my chelik misinai. That's the real humility. I'm speaking up because I learned this on Sinai. And therefore, I'm going to be the one to bring this forward. Now, this goes, like I said, today's Tanya.
I think Rabbi Weisberg is on already. Okay, but just finish off your point, please, Rabbi Smith.
Okay, so where do we see the concept of Ben Chayrin? We look in the Pirkei Avos, in the Perek Shishi, Mishnah Beis. So it says over here, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says that it's all about the Luchais. It's just about Sinai. Luchais were Ma'aseh Elokim Hema, HaMichtav Elokim Hu, Cherus ala Luchais, Al Tikra Cherus ela Cherus. Freedom. freedom. The Torah is giving us freedom. She'ein lecha ben chayim. You are not free. Elami she'esek b'talmud Torah. You're not free unless you're esek on Talmud Torah. Why is this? How's this possible? I just said at the beginning, we're a ben chayim by definition. How does a Yeshuva Levi come along and say you're not a ben chayim unless you're learning Torah? And the answer is like this. It's not a stira. The emes is we're b'nei chayim. We are a ben chayim. But in order to stay a ben chayim, you have to learn Torah. Because the Torah what gets us the clarity to set aside our calculations. Just like in the pasuk, the Rabbi Wilhelm, and I'll conclude with this. The beautiful pasuk that the Rabbi Wilhelm said, "V'heisesi ha'ama mitzrayim ta'avdun es ha'elokim ala harazeh." The Eibishter is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you think you're a small person, you're just a shepherd, you don't know anything, you don't have any stature to go talk to Paro. That's your calculations. And you have the calculations that maybe the Jewish people aren't worthy. The Eibishter says, put aside all your calculations. I have my own calculations. Number one, in what you're going to go do, you might be very small, rabbi, or almost rabbi, or going to sign up to become a rabbi with online Smicha. But know that I am with you. The Eibishter is with you and he's with me. Right? He says, I'm going to be with you. And then he says, as to your calculations about whether the people are worthy of your effort to try to take them out, yes, they are worthy. Because from the Eibishter's viewpoint, they are ben chayrin. And I'm going to show you that they're going to come to Har Sinai. They're going to accept all your tainas against them are true. But at the end of the day, the Bnei Yisrael are going to come to Har Sinai. They're going to accept the Torah. And everyone's going to accept upon himself this responsibility to be a Meira Hira for himself. Be a Meira Hira with the chelik the Torah receives on Har Sinai. He's going to be a Ben Chayrin. He's going to now live like a free man. He's not going to get confused by the calculations. He's not going to ascribe power to anybody else. And then he will inspire his family. He will inspire his community. He will inspire the entire Jewish people and the entire world. That our obligation is to go and teach this to the entire world, what it means to be a free man, what it means to believe Mitzrayim. That's what the Eibishter's purpose in bringing the Makkos and the Shabbos HaGodol, the Nes of Shabbos HaGodol, and bringing the Yidden to Har Sinai is that the whole world should be redeemed from the spiritual and physical slavery. So this is what it means to be Ben Chayrin. You already have it. Keep it clear in your mind. Connect yourself to the Torah, which keeps, it's like your windshield. Torah is like the windshield wiper fluid. That's what keeps your vision clear of who you really are, who the Eibishter really are, and who your fellow man really is, so that you could see in him what he really is and speak to that innateness of the divine image in every single human being, bring it to the forefront and bring him to the clarity of his own, that he's a Ben Chayrin also. And that will bring us Mashiach, that we will all live the life of a Ben Chayrin together with the Eibishter in a way of tremendous simchas elam, the Mashiach now.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi Yitzchak David Smith. If anybody would like to listen to more of Rabbi Yitzchak's drushes, he has a YouTube or channel, Rabbi Yitzchak David Smith.org. Is that right?
No, it's
right?
RabbiSmith.org is the website, and the YouTube channel is Hope for Humanity.
Hope for Humanity.
And there's another one. I have two actually, and also Teachers to the World.
Teachers to the World. See, now you know that he came prepared. This is everything he said. I'm sure he said 100 times to his people online. Very good. Shekayach. Thank you very, very much.
Shekayach to you, Rabbi.
All right, so now we started off with Rabbi Manis Friedman, and we had Rabbi Yitzchak David Smith, and now you see Rabbi Isser Weisberg